I think we'll probably have a few more trickle in here, but Erik,
Okay.
great to see you again, man. I forgot about the nice background you have there for the
Oh,
podcast.
right.
Looks sharp. Oh man,
Go
well,
long TD.
yes, we gotta get you
Love it.
some gear. It goes for
Right.
everybody here. Um, man, well, it's awesome to see you, talk to you again, and I'm sure a lot of folks in here, they probably read our stories up at Go Long, and
Yeah,
no
hopefully so.
one way or another, but I wouldn't be doing you justice if I try to like sum it all up here in
Right.
a couple quick minutes. But I gotta say, man, talking to a lot of players, I've never run across anything remotely similar to what you've been through. Not just like in the job talking to people around the NFL, but in life in general, consuming any form of
Right.
media ever. It's surreal. I can't believe what it's been like to live it this past 10, 11 years. So in your words, I guess, before we get it rolling here, this is just like a free flowing conversation. I mean, people will
Perfect.
just kind of jump in, and I'm sure they'll have
Great.
questions and stuff. But
It's a pretty cool thing you do,
eh,
by the way.
oh,
Uh,
thanks so
and,
much.
and I haven't even done it yet, but just the idea of it sounds pretty awesome.
It's just a cool way for us to try to get some folks around the league, talking to fans and everything. But in your
Yep.
words, Erik, like how do you even sum it up? You know what I mean? Like what you've been through
Right.
from about 2011 on, or start wherever you'd like.
Yeah. Well, like you said, there's, I guess, no way to sum it up, um, other than, um, you know, like losing when you go back to 2011. That morning, I woke up to a phone call from the sheriff's department, and they asked me to come down, but wouldn't tell me what it was for. Um, that was my first clue that this wasn't good. And and I remember the steps walking up, and the guy met me outside, and kind of the 5 minute drive it was a long 5 minutes, and then uh, later that morning. So Dylan, at the time, my other son Dylan was 13, so they're about 5 years apart, and Dylan had been sleeping over a friend's house, who I was also friends with the dad, and so I remember um, getting in the police car, and driving over to the house where Griffin was, and uh, I remember sitting in the kitchen of the house. So the mom was home and the son was home. And the mom was actually someone that was in the Al Anon parent meeting group I would go to on Monday nights. And her son was there. And her son was talking about how he was a friend of Griffin's, and that he was just, he liked hanging out with his friends, and he was just, you know, hanging out that night.
Yeah.
And this friend of mine, Chris Gurman, that was in the story, um, at the time he was still working for Lost Hills Sheriff's Department, and Chris had come over because I didn't call him, but he showed up, and I'm going to guess it was somebody at his station that told him. And so he was sitting there with me at the kitchen table, and so and I still hadn't. They weren't. No one was allowing me to go back in there just yet. And eventually, uh, so I was separated at the time. So we were living in two different houses. Well, eventually, Marshawn, who's now my ex-wife, she showed up, and we go back into this room, and it was this kid's bedroom. So Dylan Griffin, excuse me, was I think he was lying face up, and that's the first dead body I'd ever seen. and it just happened to be Griffin. And so, yeah, that was a really weird time, which ultimately there was an investigation. And it turns out that that kid was actually the one who injected Griffin.
Oh my God.
And apparently Griffin didn't had a thing against injecting himself. So this kid injected Griffin into his toes. And then he had an immediate reaction. Like like you just go backward and uh, foaming at the mouth and everything. And so this kid drove around. Apparently, this is from the detective. This kid was driving around panicking and calling friends of his that were all telling him, take Griffin to the hospital. And he never did. And what he did was he took him home. And he took him home. So to get him out of the car, Griffin was either already dead or there was no life to him. So he would have had to drag him into his house. And apparently he laid him down and eventually left and went to another party. So Griffin died by himself in this kid's bedroom. Somehow that kid didn't tell that story that morning. And he didn't go to jail. He got probation. And, now I think they made a law where you cannot be, if you're with somebody who's ODing like Griffin, if you yourself were participating, you cannot go to jail in any way if you were to somehow take him to a hospital, because that's what that kid, I can guarantee you, that's what he was thinking.
Yeah. And
so that's 2011.
And
so that's kind of when life ended a little bit, not just for Griffin, but at that time, I had coached both kids' teams, and it was October 30th. So the season had just ended, and but at the time I was also broadcasting, sports broadcasting, and I was coaching a bunch of quarterbacks and receivers in a passing camp, and was traveling a little bit for that too, and yeah, all that ended. So anyway, that was a big bump in the road for sure.
I mean, and your mom, and you find out about your dad. I mean,
Yeah.
it was this avalanche of just the worst news you could possibly get as a human being,
Yeah,
right? And it just kind of sent you to this.
Well,
I think you called it like this empty sadness.
Right. Well, prior to Griffin passing away, there was earlier the year before, so in 2010 on Mother's Day, um, Dylan and I and my mom's husband, we'd gone golfing, and at the end of that day, she and I sit around and we're having lunch afterward, just the two of us, and I'm walking her to the car, and she's like, I'm gonna be getting some tests back tomorrow. I'm like, tests for what? Oh, nothing. Just, I don't know. I haven't been feeling all that good lately. So it came back and it was like the next day. It was stage 4 uterine cancer. So, and it was weird because, it's not like my mom and I were all that close growing up. And it was, but this sort of sent things in a little different direction for a while. And, I'd take her to her, she'd have chemo, and so she was at, I think it was Tarzana Hospital or something, Northridge Hospital, whatever, in Tarzana. And she'd stay overnight, and so I'd stay with her. And, those chairs that kind of, it's a chair, but then it does this later. So that's what I'd sleep on. And, I'd I'd bring a massage table over every now and then, and so, and I'd drive her whatever. She got some of her stuff down at Cedars and down over in the LA area, and so I'd drive her to that and stuff. And so she had to go through some wicked surgery where they removed like a bunch of organs or part of organs or whatever, and she somehow, like, that was kind of not looking good at all, but she survived that. And then yeah, after, so Griffin's thing happened before that, before she passed away. And in fact, it was not long after Griffin passed away that I get a knock on my door, and it's Courtney Baird. And so that started sort of it went from an acquaintance where I'd met her once or twice throughout the years, because I was friends with her brother. She was the younger sister of Dave Baird, and so that's how I at least knew her. And then as like I said, that developed into something eventually that was, like, I guess you would consider us boyfriend and girlfriend. But even along the way there, in looking back, there were some things there that were fraudulent.
Yeah.
So she was in a house that she was saying that she was paying rent to her brother cash, which I came to find out she wasn't. Like, her brother was basically paying for that for her. And I think it was her brother's ex-wife, that's now her ex-wife, that basically, told her to get out. And it's just but the reason I bring this up is because when my mom was in her final stages, Courtney was around and part of that. And like, I remember talking to my aunt Patrice about this, and I said, what did my mom think back then? And she's like, well, your mom, in one way, I think, felt like Courtney was a bit of a gold digger. Mm-hmm. And that was before any theft. So anyway, so this, you're right, this is sort of a bizarre, twisted tale. But I guess one way to say it now is that because of people like you and some other things that have gone on behind the scenes, I've been approached by not only you and not only with this article, but in other ways too. And then here someone comes along, wants to write a book, and where I think, and Anna have thought all along, an investigative reporter piece that's backed with some hefty resources behind it could help reveal, like I've said, Courtney's kind of a speck in the ointment. Yeah. What she did is she revealed that the ointment's bad.
Right.
And so, and when I say bad, it's really bad, not just for me. And so that's why I'm hoping that, it's been all these years, right? Just since I've been in it. And I just got the reason I'm late into this thing is because I was on the phone with my aunt, and again, telling her, you say it's been long for me, but it really hasn't, because mentally, I only jumped in this game about a year or two ago. But for you guys, for Anna, for you, for Dylan, for friends of mine that are just, for what you guys had to sit and watch and go through. I hope I'm not saying, can you kind of say anything on here?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. Because I what it feels like to me is, it feels like, sorry if this comes out wrong, but it feels like I was being raped, and everyone that was around me had to watch it. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting now, I guess it feels good now, that people like Anna and eventually Dylan and Patrice and that the payoff for them is that not just Courtney go down, because that's a given, but that this whole system of, I don't know what you call it other than corruption, um, that it gets revamped and gets called out. There's judges, there's lawyers, it's crazy. And I'm not talking just the conservative court system, criminal one.
No doubt. I'm sure we got a lot of folks in here who would love to ask you some questions. So I'm gonna just shut up here. It's just insane what you've been through, from the depression.
I like the
to
backdrop on your, what is that, a deck?
Patio? Yeah. I was
Pretty
saying
cool.
to Anna and these guys, we've got a baby girl that's going to bed. So to be safe, right? Remove
Right.
myself from everybody.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, anybody in here have a question? I mean, it's Erik is about as transparent of a dude, as you'll find on this planet through everything.
I appreciate that as a rising journalist, as I always say on here, because must I say, first of all, Kai, well done. I never thought you wasn't crazy stories, but Erik, my man, you have a crazier one. So let me ask you this. You talk about how you're in this house, you walk in this bedroom, you see this kid. Ultimately, it's this son, laying face down. How can you? Let's back up. Did you ever forgive the kid for injecting him? Let me ask that first.
Let me answer that by saying I never had a minute where I cared about this kid in order to want to forgive him. I didn't need to. He was not really part of the story I cared about. And whatever is going to happen to him is going to happen, whether it's this way or that way. I could care less. My son made some very poor choices in life, but he was also there was a part of him that it broke my heart because his brain wasn't set up to succeed in this world. And he had some learning disabilities, and that would creep into he would sabotage unknowingly the very friendships and relationships in his own life. And he had a very, very difficult time in school, very difficult. And it wasn't his fault. His brain just could not function right. And it broke my heart for him. So in one way, I feel bad that he died at such a young age. But part of me thinks, what if he was older? What if he had a family and a job, and more people than just him were affected? So, I think beyond that kid. It could have been any kid. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it.
That's interesting. So now we talk about the situation with Courtney. I read the first part and I'm like, okay, the kid died. Now this with Erik. Out of left field, here comes this oddball of a character. I never thought that she was. Wow, I never thought that she was coming out of left field the way she did. If you had to say something to her now, what would you say to her?
Well, it's funny because I ran into her recently. She was at the very Vaughn's grocery store where she would take my credit card and charge over $18,000 at. So I saw her in there not too long ago. And I said, "Oh, whose credit card are you using today? And she kind of startled a second, and she was like, don't come near me. And I'm like, I'm not coming near you. And I said, all you got to worry about now is what you're going to do in jail. And she's like, oh, I'm not going to jail. So she's facing 14 years. Yes, she is going to jail. So she took, this is a guesstimate of mine, about $300,000. $10,000 of that came in for Griffin after he'd passed away. $10,000 of a deceased person's finances that really wasn't even his. It was people that had donated to him, and she knew him. How cold-hearted is that? That's like diabolical, like crazy. So when you ask me what would I say to her, I don't know that there's anything that I say to her that for her would register. Like, what's the point? You know, she's kind of fallen into that subhuman category. Like, when you take a child who's 18 years old when he passed away, all the money that is in an account that's called Griffin's Memorial Fund, you take all that? So I don't know what I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know how you've kept your cool through this all, Erik. I mean, when we first talked back in, I think it was like October, it was a long time ago, to then when we caught up just a couple weeks ago, I could tell, like, how, I mean, you're obviously angry about it, as anybody would be, but I can't believe how calm you are talking about this all now compared to then. It seems like over time, I don't know if you accept this all, but maybe you just learn how to handle it, how to process it, and know the truth is on your side and it's going to come out.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is that through this process, there was a Dr. Tomaszewski who was a neuropsychologist, and I think you had mentioned him before. I don't know if you talked to him or not, but initially, he's the person that when I got evaluated, okay, picture this. I want to get evaluated by person to gain control of my own money in the middle of getting stolen from, when I can't barely add 2 + 2. So who do you think was responsible for me even going there? Because that came after Courtney had forged that $10,000 check on the account that I would have had access to had I passed this test. And so I went from there to literally just a year ago being reevaluated in June and and now being officially declared having mental and medical capacity over myself. So the time that I was talking to you was when, October? So that wasn't that much long after that. There was an interview I did, one of the first ones I did back in December of, I think it was, what are we in, 21 now? This would have been, I think, December of 2019. And I remember going on there and listening to me afterward. And the guy who was doing the interview kept trying to steer me back because I was rambling everywhere. And now I feel like mentally my brain has calmed down enough. And this is what Dr. Tomaszewski said. He goes, Erik, people can tell you right to your face, and they did, Courtney is stealing from you blind. And it would go like as though it was never said. Then later, I would get the idea that someone's stealing from me, that very same person. And eventually I'd get pissed at you for not telling me, which you did. And he was like, Erik, that's normal. And that did happen. That happened a few times, probably more than a few times. And so it's like now we are, 5 years out or a little bit more. And which is when you consider when he said, Tomaszewski said, you're looking, first of all, to survive to begin with is sort of like never happens. But if you are, then you're left with what's called a traumatic brain injury. Because in the best case scenario, that's 2 to 3 years of your initial recovery. You throw in all the seizures and fainting things you had early on, now you're up into the 4.5, 5 year category, which that's kind of where we're at. So now with all this, I feel like the luckiest man walking.
It's amazing.
But to get back to Dustin, I noticed your color red. You probably didn't know this, Dustin, but I went to NC State, which is red and white. So I'd almost think you were representing the Wolfpack today.
Man.
Oh boy.
Hey, God, I could ask you a million more questions, but yeah, Dan, Joe, Chris, anybody, just let her rip.
So Erik, I really enjoyed reading Tyler's piece. I do feel like it ended maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs too soon, because I was really interested to know what your relationship is like now with your other son, Dylan. And kind of, I noticed he was in parts of the story, but wasn't obviously a central role in there. So just interested in your relationship now.
Well, it's good. It's good. But I've got some explaining to do over time. And, to me, yes, Anna has been incredible through this. Incredible. She and I went to high school together. But Dylan, through no fault of his own, has endured more tragedy in his life than anyone I know. And yet this dude still keeps on being passionate about whatever it is. Like for him, it's baseball. But his baseball, the reason he's passionate about baseball, I coached, other than football, I coached one of my kids' teams outside of football. That was Dylan for 1 year in baseball. It was like 9 or 10 years old. And he liked it, but I think he kind of liked everything. Like he got into flying remote control airplanes, and he got into lacrosse, and he got into football and basketball, whatever. And prior to Griffin passing away, some friends of his had gotten him to go. They wanted to play baseball, and the story I hear is that they got him into going to the pitching area, right? And so they clocked him with the radar gun, and he threw it like, I don't know, 90 something miles an hour. And then not long after that, he passed away. So, and it was in the middle of his tail end of his football season. And so the reason Dylan even went into baseball was to honor Griffin. And so here now he is playing, and he's pretty good. And it's to see him work at something literally nonstop every day. He'll get me out there to like pitch and soft toss, and he wanted a pitching machine, so I got him a pitching machine. So he's crazy into this stuff, and so it's just fun to watch him, because he lost a brother, he nearly lost me, he's lost all of his grandparents now, and there was a time when the girlfriend that he still has, they were together since he was a junior in high school. There was a time when those two were at sort of an afternoon party, something or other, and some kid said something to his girlfriend, and Dylan, I think, sort of got in the middle of that. And then somebody came up from behind him and hit him over the head with something, knocked him out. He got jumped by like 4 or 5 guys, and as he passed out, he slips into the pool. So he's got some of his own brain trauma from that. And like those kids had no idea who he was or what he'd been through in life, and so I'm just happy to see this part of my story that's part of his life start to generate, things in a positive way. Like he's so fired up that things are now happening the way they're happening, because for so long they didn't. And I'm not talking legal stuff. I mean, just in life in general. So my relationship with Dylan right now, thankfully, is good, and I'm going to make sure I keep it that way.
You say it's good. Does that mean it's a close relationship, Eric?
Yeah, yep. He's back living with me now, and he's 23 years old, and so he was 13 when Griffin passed away, and so he's still got the same girlfriend, and they he lives with me, and so does she. So they just both drove up. Well, I'm going to go tomorrow, about 2 hours north of here. The travel team he plays on, where he's getting ready to go back and play college ball. There's this travel team he plays on, so it's about 2 hours north. They have a game today and then a doubleheader tomorrow. I'm going to go for the doubleheader tomorrow. So anyway, he's loving what he does, and it's just fun being around him.
Do you ever find yourself in an odd trying to figure out when to explain these things to Dylan? Because 23-year-old Dylan knows half of what 13-year-old Dylan saw. So, do you ever find yourself in odds like, when is the right time to tell Dylan about Courtney, about this and everything else? When is the right time to explain yourself?
You know what? That's a really good question, and I think I don't know the answer to it, and I'll tell you how I don't. Is that um, when all of this came to fruition, and I mean all the theft stopped, and Courtney was no longer in the picture, I kind of went overboard in wanting to talk to talk to Dylan about whatever, almost like say I'm sorry over and over and over. And he was like, enough. He didn't say enough. But I could tell with his body language and stuff, he was telling me, okay, let's just hang out. So I think my aunt had told me, that, I think Dylan just wants to know you're not going anywhere. When he gets up in the morning, if you're still there, that works for him. And so that's kind of how I go about it now. Like if he wants to go play baseball, we'll go play baseball. And I just want to make sure I'm always there for whatever he needs. And if he wants to talk about something, I'll talk to him about it. But I'm not going to force myself on him, because I think he just wants to, he's 23, but in so many ways, he missed out on part of his childhood. So I think he just wants to wake up in the morning, go have fun, do his thing, and nothing bad happened. So I want to do my part in that.
Like you've said, Anna said, I mean, there's zero depression now. I mean, you wake up at 2 a.m. some mornings, ready to get the day rolling. I couldn't believe it when you texted me the night before. Oh, I'll be up there. I'm like doing the math in my head. Are my time zones off? But
right.
I mean, you're a genuinely happy guy. Like there's that empty sadness is so far gone. Like you, I mean, this goes for any ex-player, like that went through any kind of trauma. Like you find a reason to get up in the morning and be excited and go to that doubleheader. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of it, is that, like I said, it took me a while to come to, like, get out of this sort of walking brain fog. And now that I am, like, for instance, the NFL, who's never been anywhere near associated with mental illness or suicide or anything, right? I mean, that's almost the definition of what some of these sports are, football namely, right? Now here they are jumping into, every team now has some behavioral health clinician along with a staffed therapist. That never happened before. And So there was a woman that approached me years ago during my recovery that said, "Hey, I'm directing something on suicide prevention. Would you be a part of it?" So of course I was, and I went around and I was talking to, you know, my high school and other things about my suicide attempt, and then we sort of lost touch with each other for a little bit. I got my life derailed, of course, and then I got back in touch with her probably a year ago, and here we are about to bring a suicide prevention program to the NFL. So those are the kind of things that get me out of bed in the morning. You know, that's pretty cool. And like you said, that's just the NFL. Why not every pro sport? And anyway, so that's all. I know the story itself is big, but underneath the big part, there's other parts too that are for me big.
This is
The way Anna described it, like when you were, you know, for in this fog, you know, for a number of years, and like she said, like, you know, you'd be on the couch watching TV for hours on end. Like, did you have any recollection at all of what that state was really like? Is it really just it's gone? Yeah.
I like people like Anna have had to tell me, mostly Anna, have had to tell me things about my life that I'll never know. I just have to take them on their word for it. And yeah, that's just, and it was at that time that Courtney attacked.
That's
Anna
evil.
was like, Erik, anybody could have stolen from you. Anybody. It's just that only one person did.
We got to bring Anna in here. She's been pretty quiet over there. Well, what do you remember about that time, Anna?
This is not my story. I was a bystander. It was difficult. It was difficult. He was so much, and we testify this in his annulment trial. He was very much like a child. So, you know, like kids don't eat. They want to play, whatever. They want to sit in front of the TV. If you didn't put food in front of him, he wouldn't eat. Like the brain wouldn't tell him to eat. Like he didn't feel hunger. He didn't feel heat. I remember us playing basketball when we were at his sister's house, and it was like 90 or 100 degrees outside. Everyone's sweating, and he's wearing a sweatshirt. So we had to tell him, Erik, take off your sweatshirt. So it was things like that was like, okay, this is going to take some time. But physically, he was fine. He was able to speak with everybody, answer questions intelligibly. And you think that everything is penetrating. Lord comes, we find out nothing was penetrating. He had the right responses at the time. For example, I went over to his house, and when he was getting treatment, I was handling all his medical bills and dealing with insurance companies in order to make sure that his medical bills are taken care of and the insurance is processing it. So after I did that, I would go to his house and say, okay, Erik, we got to pay these 2 doctor bills. Everything has been, the insurance already paid. He goes, well, I can't write a check. I go, well, why? He goes, I'm overdrawn. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't be overdrawn. I knew what his account was, but I'm thinking, okay, maybe he just forgot to do something, and I let it go. 3 weeks, I go back, and again, he says, oh, I haven't gone to the bank yet to figure out why it was overdrawn. Right there, that was a red flag to me. Was because being overdrawn was a red flag, but the second part was that he didn't go to the bank to go figure out why he was overdrawn. Erik was very meticulous to the penny, as far as if somebody overcharged him by $2, oh, he's going to dispute that charge. And that's how I would be too. So it's like, this is not Erik. And then I would see all these, I don't know, Amazon packages, all addressed to Courtney. And mind you, the 3 years that they dated off and on, not once did he ever have her live with him. So all of a sudden she's quitting her job, like within weeks of him coming home. quitting her job and moving her daughter in and her dog in. And it's like, again, everything was not right. In my mind, nothing was right with this picture. And, women's intuition, well, never doubt it, because I got into his bank account, and that's how I discovered all the, the daily 18 withdrawals. I saw and when I say daily, we're talking $300 to $700 a day, just taking it. Like, who does that? Nobody does that. And she was like, just taking it, her soccer charges for her, her health insurance for her and her daughter, her storage, whatever. It was like Erik was her own personal bank. And he had no idea what was going on. Zero. So it was very hard for us to see him. And we thought, okay, maybe us telling him is not working. Maybe if we get the judge or a police officer to tell him, it will click, right? Because Erik and I and everyone that we know had the utmost respect for the law. And I was in constant communication with the detective, and he told me everything that was going on. And it was just, it was almost like when we went in court and the detective testified, and he testified that she was stealing and that she's been stealing for months. And we're like, okay, the detective is testifying. Wait, then Courtney says it. She admits to stealing his money in court. Like, okay, great. This is all happening. And Erik just walks out of the place with her. And I'm like, I go, literally that day on January 10th, 2017, we thought we lost Erik forever. We thought, oh shit, he survived the suicide attempt so she can steal from him. That's what we came away with. That was our impression that we came away with. And there was like, all we could do at that point was continue to fight in the conservatorship case, which we got bamboozled by all these attorneys. They told us one thing. Oh no, all you need is a letter from the doctor saying that he was incapacitated, and it would be a slam dunk. And at the time that we conferred with the attorneys, there was no marriage. So we said, well, what if she goes out and go and gets married? Oh, no. All you just need is that letter of capacity or incapacity, and you'll be able to annul that marriage. Well, it cost Erik $125,000 to annul the marriage. And then the detective was telling us, right. The detective was telling us it was a slam dunk case. We've always been told this from every single aspect of, there's no way she's going to be able to get out of this. So when the first DA, Belle Chin, which by the way, we didn't know her name, I ended up discovering out in October of 2018. She apparently, the 4 reasons that she gave the detective was they didn't want to bring national media attention to Erik, especially after his suicide attempt, that Erik needed a caregiver, that the conservatorship would make her go away. And there was one other thing. Sorry, I'll think of it in a minute. But there was like 4 things that they said.
The marriage muddied the waters.
Oh, the marriage muddied the waters.
Which the marriage was a crime.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way.
Right. So I'm like, what? We all knew it was coerced. How is it that when he signs the conservatorship over to his sister on December 13th, 2016, that exact same day, Courtney's emailing the Santa Barbara courthouse a reservation and using Erik's credit card, again, unauthorized, to make the marriage ceremony reservation. She was always one step ahead, because you know why? We figured out she took control of Erik's emails. She had Erik's emails on her phone, and she also diverted emails from like his lawyer, his estate lawyer, and his financial institution to go straight into the trash. So he would never read it. So he would get upset with the people not saying, you're not paying my bills, when in fact they're writing to him saying, we can't pay your bills because of the theft, and everything was going straight to his trash. So she was that controlling and that manipulative and that diabolical. She put on an act, hon. She put on an act. She convinced Erik's aunt and other friends, that she's there to take care of him. But she couldn't convince me of that.
Thank God. I mean, thank God you're on the front lines of this fight. And we touched on it a little bit. Like, what's in it for her? So she just wanted to live this dream life in her head to just spend and spend and spend. Like, was it?
Yeah, because she became friends with Marshawn, which was Eric's ex-wife, real wife, and she would because she was texting Marshawn. She was texting Marshawn when all this investigation was going on, and I have copies of those texts. And she was saying, "I'm going to go to jail. They're going to arrest me for fraud. Writing a check is fraud. Using his credit card without an authorization is fraud. Can you please bail me out? And I'll pay you back. Make sure you take care of my daughter too when they arrest me, because I don't want her going to children's services." So it's all this stuff. And she said, you know what? She saw the life that Marshawn had lived with Erik, which Marshawn didn't have to work. Marshawn had whatever kind of spending issues she had, but she wanted that life for herself. So prior to her dating Erik, 3 weeks prior to her dating Erik in 2011, she was dating this married man, Jonathan Schwartz, who ended up being the guy money manager for Alanis Morissette and going to jail for embezzling $4 million.
Jeez.
So that's the kind of crowd she likes to keep. She's just a gold digger looking for a man to take care of. Yep. She didn't want to work. And, you know.
Have you guys met my publicist, Anna Durgan? She's also my legal counsel.
And the business manager and everything else. And guess what? Right. I don't get fucking paid. I'm gonna call the California Department of Labor. This is abuse.
Well, that's part 4. We're putting out part 4
I told
tomorrow.
her if she keeps it up, I'm gonna double her salary.
So it was hard. It was really hard to see. And I mean, it was like they were going to be signing this this marital settlement agreement, which was going to put her have her in his will. And I'm like, hell no. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give $10,000 of my own money. Take this case to trial, please.
Who knows what she does then, right?
Right. Oh no. Let me tell you,
she's that evil.
Okay, let me tell you something. Had I not called the detective and told the detective to call Dr. Tomaszewski, it very well she might have gotten away with stealing all his money. She might have gotten away with it. Because if Erik would have gotten, if the Dr. Tomaszewski wasn't aware about all this theft, so it's really by chance that it all happened the way it did. Because Dr. Tomaszewski might have given him a clearance. I'm not exactly sure. I can't speak on that behalf because he did do extensive testing, but throughout the whole entire report, it would make reference to Courtney stealing and she was taking advantage of him because he couldn't comprehend the theft. He just couldn't comprehend the theft. Like they were saying, here someone is telling him, oh, someone just stole $50,000 from you, right? And then he's looking at his bank statement and he was more concerned that he was overdrawn on his bank statement. Not that what just someone told him that $50,000 was being stolen. So that was an unusual reaction to have. And of course, 2 times throughout, Courtney had Erik call. She probably dialed the number for him and had him call the detective to say, don't prosecute. And again, the reason why I know all this is because I keep in contact with the detective, even though he's retired. I still communicate with him because this is the one case that he had that was not finished before he left, that he wanted to see finished. And so I keep in contact with him. And even the new detective too, he's great. All the detectives, I got to say, were great in this aspect. It was the first DA who didn't want to do the work. Oh, the marriage muddied the waters. Really? The marriage was coerced. We have all the evidence to prove it. Just prove the evidence.
Anna, can I jump in and say one thing about what a fraud she was? Is that when Anna gets a hold of her in an email, this is after all of the theft is done now, right? So this is the domestic violence thing, which was a fraud to begin with. Anna finally gets a hold of her in an email, and she's saying, oh no, this case isn't closed. Please give me more information. I would totally, yeah. Guess what we found out? She was sitting in the very chair in the very conference room that Anna and I were talking to this one detective at. And she goes, no. She was sitting right there the whole time saying why this case shouldn't be prosecuted. So you don't have, like, I can't go get a lawyer to represent me in court. You have to go to the DA.
You know,
and when the DA doesn't want to take your case,
Right.
but then comes across as saying, oh, give me more information. What more do you need than a confession?
Two confessions. 3 confessions.
Multiple. You know what's crazy, guys? It's like, here we are talking about this all, and thank God we're sitting here talking about this all. I just wonder how many times this has happened to people all around the country, and they have no voice. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure that's what you're fighting for now.
It helps a lot with the elderly.
Tell them, Anna, tell them the ones that aren't elderly.
Which ones, hon? Which ones?
Well, so you got Britney Spears right now.
Oh, yeah.
You've got
Bradline.
Hold on. Casey Kasem's family, spearheaded now by Carrie Kasem, his daughter. Casey Kasem married late in life. And so this particular woman was his conservator also, and she kept his entire kids away from him.
It was his wife. It was his second wife.
Whoever it was, she kept
his own kids.
His kids, which weren't hers, away from him. So he died, never seeing them.
She was just on Adam Carolla talking about that 2 weeks ago. It's unbelievable.
Right. So she on her own, more than, I think around half the states, correct me if I'm wrong, Anna, now have laws in place that you, as a conservator, it's against the law for you to keep the conservatee away from his family.
Right.
So there's a movement afoot, Tyler and everybody, that I'm the last guy here to this party. There's Brad Lund, who's Walt Disney's grandson, has been in this for a long time. In fact, the judge, Cowan, who was the judge in my case, was the judge in his case. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there's only one way to be declared incapacitated. It's a neuropsychologist. This judge, Cowan, declared Brad Lund incapacitated.
Even though he had medical records that said he did have capacity.
Yeah. So Brad Lund is suing personally that judge. So there's a movement afoot within the legal community itself to get the system changed, which again, I didn't know there was one until I was in it.
So we just basically need more medical experts and less governmental bureaucracy and bullshit. Like, really, just get what's important involved instead of the lawyers that are all trying to make money off each other at the end of the day.
And they do.
Well, it's like what Anna was telling me. We were standing in my house one night, and I said, I feel like I don't fit. I'm in this hallway, which we were standing in. I said, I feel like I'm in this hallway, and the conservatorship court system nor the criminal court system acknowledge this hallway. And she was like, well, here's where the conservatorship court system could have helped you, is that had you been instantly declared incapacitated, had you been conserved of the estate and of the person, you still could have gotten married. But if I was your conservator, I would have been able to go down, find out where because I know exactly where you got married, she said. I could have show up the next day with this conservatorship of the person right in my hand. Erik's not allowed to sign that legal document, which is what a marriage certificate is. So that's how one thing it could have saved you. And then she also said that her and my aunt had it figured that if Courtney would have gotten arrested and went to jail at the time when we were together, guess who would have been bailing her out? Me. So Anna said, if I would have been concerned of the estate and of the person financially, I couldn't have done that. So you can use this system to your advantage. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping in the future to take to the NFL and other pro sports too, because it's just life. Everybody's heading down that road.
Yeah.
So if this system exists, use it. But then you also have to help it get designed to use it the way it's supposed to.
Alex, Don, Mike, feel free to jump in.
So, Erik, I'm so happy that everything is going well for you now. Reading Tyler's story on you, I had to stop reading so many times just because it was so terrifying that I couldn't continue. I've never read anything so frightening in my life. Thank God you had somebody in your life who loved you so much that wanted to help you as much as they did. And Anna, you're like one of the greatest people ever. So congratulations to you, or I don't even know if it's congratulations. I can't even put it into the proper terminology because, you know, everything about it is so horrifying. But Erik, going back to your playing career, even, I believe you played with one of my all-time favorite Bills, Joe Ferguson. I don't know if you or was just before or just after you.
No. I never did. You know that hit that I think it was Wilbur Marshall put on it when he was with the Lions, Joe Ferguson, I mean. People thought that was me. In fact, when I was a kid, when I was like in, I don't know, I want to say it was like junior college, there was a guy that played for the Vikings named Tommy Kramer. And some people thought he was related to me, which he obviously wasn't.
You and Fergie had similar playing styles. You know, you guys, and this is not an insult. You didn't necessarily have the most talent in the world, but you played so hard, you gutted it out, and you were certainly a player to be admired from like the every fan. So, you know, I just want to let you know, like, guys like you are so appreciated, and I'm so happy that you're doing so much better. And Tyler, thanks for bringing this story to us, because like I said, it's one of the scariest stories I've ever read with a happy ending. So thanks to you all for sharing your story.
Thank you for reading, Don, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I was going to say that I appreciate you saying that. I really appreciate what you said about Anna, because her especially, I mean, this girl's a rock star through this whole thing. I mean, unbelievable. And I'm glad that Tyler's stories, and hopefully more in the future, are going to bring that out, because this girl had nothing to gain, zero. And in the face, you have no idea how much, what's the word I'm looking for? Not adversity, but like opposition she faced from the criminal justice system. Crazy. And the conservatorship course, both. And yet she hung in there for, like, we're talking, Courtney admitted this thing back in November 29, 2016. She didn't get arrested till February 2020. So all those years went by and nothing. And so she hung in there this whole time. And like I think I said earlier, we've known each other since high school. But I didn't know her like that. I mean, I knew she was a good person, but not, I mean, I don't know too many, like you said, as was said here, there's not many stories like mine. Well, yes, there are. You just don't hear about them. But people like Anna don't come along either very often.
Well, and then the other thing that you said is like how you want to share this with the NFL and hopefully the NFLPA. And God knows they have landmines where the stories that don't even come close to this one. Like normally it's a family member ripping somebody off who's like completely like with all their faculties. And
Right.
here you are who were like behind the 8 ball at that time. And the NFLPA and the NFL should be looking to, and Tyler brings this up all the time, that they should be looking to with more compassion to take care of the players and former players. And if you can be a beacon to help guide that way, you'll be like the greatest hero in the history of the NFLPA in my mind.
I appreciate that. And I'm glad you said that, because that's about 2 years ago or maybe even, about 2 years ago. This is exactly what you just brought up is exactly what we're working on. So I have a feeling, no, I'm saying it's guaranteed. We're going to change. We've already begun changing laws. You're right. And the NFL and the NFLP especially need to know about this conservatorship court system. They need to know, one of the things that I was talking about with Kieran Sahota, that's the one who's doing this suicide prevention program, of maybe having an exit but you know how there's these rookie symposiums for rookies coming in out of college. We're talking about having an exit symposium. And because that's in addition to the rookies, it's the people that have played before, because a lot of these careers end in a year, 2, 3. But some of the people that have been around that are still living, they played back in the day when there was no benefits or very little. And they're the ones that are really heading for conservatorship. They're the ones that, in the demographic of me shooting myself, I was a little over 50 years old at the time. And the number one demographic of people I don't live in Ventura County, but I live right next door to it. But it's probably going to be this way in every county, is males ages, I think it's like 45 to 64. So I was sitting right in the middle of that and still am. And so it's the people that, in this exit symposium, my vision, it would be like the Hall of Fame game. And, with Zoom now, if you can't make it, you can Zoom your way in. But it's the people that are a little bit older that are going to be able to take advantage of some of these programs, I believe. And, their interest will be piqued up because they're in that demographic. And no matter what it is we're talking about.
It's wild, Eric. You guys were teammates in '99. Ryan Leaf, we sat down and had a conversation just like this. He, in so many words, said exactly what you just said, that Roger Goodell is there on draft night to give you a big hug. But where is he when you're done? You know what I mean? It's don't let the door hit you on the ass on the ass on your way out. He said, like, there's got to be something in place. Something.
Well, so the great thing is that this woman, Kieran Sahota, this is what she's been doing for like nearly a decade. And when I brought this to her regarding the NFL, she got back to me a few weeks later and she says, the NFL does an awful lot right now, an awful lot. But she goes, I'm trained to look for what they don't do. And what they don't do are programs like they dove into the mental health. We're providing this for you. We're providing that for you. They don't have a program. So they're going to have one here soon. And that's what I think the NFL has, just as a league, the corporate NFL and the NFLPA have begun to recognize that, look at the game itself. Look at how the rules are changing, equipment is changing. And that's while players are playing. And now they're getting into helping recognize that players and everybody in society, but players too, within their own worlds, have mental health issues, either themselves or people in their family. And now, what about the back end of life? And so I think that's part of what we're trying to make bring to reality too, because like it or not, every one of those players, just like every human being in America or around the world, at least in America, because the laws are such that you're all heading for conservancy. I have a 96-year-old grandmother. Okay. 10 years ago, she could have found herself in this, but we've protected her not to be, but that's only because it's such a system in need of changes, but eventually those changes are going to come because of there's these documentaries, these docuseries. Now the hell, there's even a movie of, I think it's, what is it called? I Care a Lot.
Yeah, I care a lot.
So they're making movies and documentaries about this very conservatorship. In some states, they call it guardianship. So it's the system itself that's being talked about now, at least more than ever, but in a scale of maybe 100%. At its best now, it might be 10 or 15%, if that. So we got to get it up into that, upper echelon where it's kind of everybody's talking, and doing things about changing it all the time. Make it work for you, not against you.
And you just got to keep fighting because, I mean, these guys know I'm pretty anti-government. To change anything in the system, it's like shit. You almost just have to keep whacking away with the hatchet. Like I don't. You just gotta keep working at it because there's just so many gears that make government and the legal system go. I don't know. I don't know how you change things. It's hard to get people to change.
Well, if I said to you, because as you're talking, I was about to ask you, what do you think it would take? Because I have an idea. I think Anna has an idea. And it's things like what you're now doing. It's podcasts, it's docuseries, it's investigative journalism pieces that show them in their flawed jobs, doing it flawed ways. That's what makes changes. It's taking it to legislators and changing laws that currently don't exist, or that the laws themselves need changing.
Public pressure.
Or altering. Yeah. And so to me, that's the road. That's the train we're now on. So we're laying the tracks and we're on the train too.
Well, and also, like most laws, it's created with good intentions, but we know where most of these good intention laws go. And there's always somebody looking to take advantage of the loopholes in the law. And so luckily there's somebody like you who's willing to tell their story, and somebody like Tyler who's willing to report on it without having to worry about an editor who's telling them, well, nobody's going to read this story. Who gives a rat's ass? But Tyler's out there and saying, this is a story that people need to hear. And I thank both of you for that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think it's a combination of people like jumping on the horse, and it's people making a sound, and then it's people writing about what's going on. And it's it takes everybody going, and pretty soon the wave starts to build, right? I mean, the Titanic was something that's supposed to be so big and powerful it was immune. Well, it wasn't, because that tide's coming. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is in every single way cut off all channels for what's going on to have any release other than change.
Do you think?
I have a question for you here.
Sorry, Dustin, go ahead.
Okay. I have a question for you, and that question is actually it's a two-part question. So Erik talked way at the beginning of this whole thing about how he recently saw Courtney, and when she told him, "I'm not going to jail," what? Before I ask the second part of this question, what went through your head, Anna, when you heard that story that he saw her at the Billy Bond's grocery store.
Okay, first question. I've been dying to want to see her because I would create a scene. I don't care where the hell I am. I would tell everybody she's a fucking thief. Excuse my French. And I would tell everybody so that they know who she is. And it's lucky that she ran into him and not me, because I probably might have just done something to egg her on to have her throw the first swing at me so that I could beat the crap out of her. So that's how I feel. So he's lucky. She's actually lucky she saw him, because she doesn't have, I mean, he doesn't have the ill will as far as trying to beat the crap out of her like I did. Because what she did was just, it was diabolical. It was just so wrong in so many ways. And just, if it wasn't so much that she was overplaying everything and isolating him from his family and friends, but she went to the extent of saying that she, you know, she filed a false domestic violence, as opposed to just saying, okay, my gig's up. You know, she probably wouldn't have been facing jail. No, she probably still would have, but she just should have walked away. She just shouldn't have tried to do the false domestic violence. She used a false domestic violence to extort more money from him. And that's all it was. And it worked, because poor me, poor woman, poor victim. She played the victim card. So he's lucky. She's lucky. She saw Erik and not me.
Do you know?
Justin, can I jump in real quick and add to that?
Sure.
I'd say one thing that's going to make me feel good is I tell Anna this, that one day I feel like I want to go visit Courtney in her orange jumpsuit one of these years.
We'll go together.
Can we come too?
Yes, we'll have a party.
Yes, we will have a go long TD party. For sure.
We'll be out in front of the prison like the Bundy burn party had.
Right.
I'll say this: her representatives, anybody on that side of the story is more than welcome to come on to a Zoom happy hour. We will gladly hear what that argument is in this case, because I'm not sure there is one.
No, I don't think there's ever going to be another side that anyone's want to get sitting on. Like the woman who lives across the street from me.
Sorry.
You know, on the way out, Courtney had told her, because I was out of my house for 75 days,
right, living
in a hotel, on this false domestic violence, and this woman across the street who's always been very nice. I let her know that I was back. And she goes, you know, I just feel so bad for you, and I feel so bad for Courtney, because she called Courtney about this domestic violence. So that's Courtney neighbors she told about. And so this woman, some time went by. Oh, I know what happened. So Dan Wetzel wrote a piece a while back. I don't forget how long ago it was. And I texted Alma that article, the link to it. And a couple days later, I get back a text that says, oh, she's always been so sweet to us. I was like, what? So Anna saved me.
Still defending her.
Anna saved me from walking over there and talking to her. She's like, don't. Well, sure enough, just about a week ago, I'm in my garage and she comes walking over and she goes, gosh, is everything okay? I feel like something's wrong because you don't acknowledge anymore. And I said, well, actually, no, it's not. Everything's not all right. That domestic violence was a sham, which she covered up stealing $300,000 eventually and cost me another $400,000 in legal expenses. And part of that money she took was Griffin's. And she knew him. So that's the person that was all sweet to you? I'm like, hey, it's okay to admit that when you get conned, you get conned. I did too. Only you didn't have brain injury. But that happens. And so, you know, she's like, I'm just so sorry, you know, what can I do? And I said, well, I think you just did it by walking over here. And so it's just amazing how, and I'm glad she did, and we're good now. but it's just amazing how somebody can be so good at something in life, like conning people, and get away with it. And she did. And she's never going to get prosecuted for that false domestic violence. Never. Because of what the arresting officer put in his police report. So he basically asked me a question if I had put my hands on my wife. And earlier that day, I put my hand on the back of her shoulder. So that's what I meant. Well, he, not wearing a body camera, not having a microphone, puts in quotes, I said that we had a loud argument over finances and that I pushed her. That's not what I said.
Eric didn't even know what his finances were.
Right. But because that's what's in the police report, the prosecutor looks at that as fact.
And then Courtney's fearing for her life while she's emailing you, right?
Right. And calling me to relay a message to him. Yeah.
That was all over TMZ.
Yeah, she's in fear of her life, but she's writing him an email. And I told him, of course, he wasn't going to respond, and I didn't have to tell him that. And she's leaving me a message. I still have the voice message that says, please relay this message to Erik, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, girl, you have a criminal protective order, right? Because you're in fear of your life. What the hell are you doing? It was another part of her sham. And that's all it was. She went so far as to get Erik's neighbors to look at him differently than what they knew, because she's a good con. That's all she is. She's a con artist. So a grifter, she'll go to one, I don't know who's her next victim going to be, but it's going to be somebody, because she doesn't want to work.
Don put it so perfectly. Like, any law that's in place, the way this is, like, there's going to be evil that will find a way to take advantage of that will find a loophole, a way to exploit. And then, it could be something small and it can be something extreme where it should have ruined your life, Erik. Really.
Right. But and that was regarding lawmaking. Initially, that was one of my thoughts was, okay, let's say you get a law made. Well, the next cycle it comes up and someone's going to dismantle it in some way. They're going to take, even for what you bring as the complete pie, someone's going to take a chunk out of it to get it in the first time. Then the next time someone might not like something about it and they'll take another piece out. Eventually it won't even be a pie anymore. And I think you have to vigilantly, what I found is in talking with this Senator Hertzberg, who's the Senate Majority Leader in California, he's like, there's 4 bills on the floor right now. So there's 4 senators right now that are writing bills on conservatorship. And he goes, and they have friends too. And so our goal is to take over the majority of that, and go talk to them en masse about, here's what's going on with the conservatorship court system that you are all approving of. Like, they have no idea what's going on. They have none.
This is not partisan at all, right? Both sides can get on board with something like this.
Correct.
This is on a human being level. So there's no partisan to this. You can be Republican, Democrat, you're still going to get conservative at some point, potentially.
Right.
And,
around our 80s.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what I think, Anna's already done a lifetime. Like, she told me today, she goes, Erik, you personally are a full-time job. And so I'm hoping she's willing to take that full-time job with me and keep on going, because there's a lot of good things that can happen out of this, I think.
Well, that's a good spot. Holy cow.
Let me tell you something. Erik and I we're the lone wolves. We're the ones that are demanding that someone become conserved if ever there's a police investigation of theft, like in Erik's case. We're just using Erik's case as an example. Had that judge conserved Erik of both the person in the estate, all of this could have been avoided. Honestly, all of this could have been avoided. Courtney would have just been out of his house. She wouldn't have been facing jail. Not until Erik recovered enough, and then he could decide whether or not he wanted to move forward with prosecuting her. But he wouldn't have lost $700,000. It would have been $50,000 to $70,000 at the time had they just conserved him of the person. But because everybody is saying, don't take away your civil liberties, don't take away your voting rights. Everything is about voting. That's what they maintained it. They want to be the least restrictive. And all we wanted to do, we weren't going to, mind you, Erik shot himself August 18th, 2015. We kept everything in place for him. We didn't move him out of his house. We kept everything status quo. So if we were trying to do anything untoward towards Erik, wouldn't we have moved him out of his house, put him in an apartment, do everything that's where he doesn't have to so much to handle? We didn't. We kept everything the same for him. So we didn't do anything that was causing the conservatorship. It was Courtney that was stealing from him, forced us to file for conservatorship. And that was 17 months after he shot himself. But and then this court-appointed attorney hears the detective testify, and the detective is saying she's stealing from him, blah, blah, blah. She admits to it. And the court-appointed attorney is saying, that's okay. He doesn't want this conservatorship, and we want $10,000 to $15,000 a month for food and incidentals. We're just like all there looking in shock, like, did we just hear this? Like the whole face, everyone in the courtroom's face just dropped when that attorney was asking for $10,000 to $15,000 a month for food and clothing, because all his bills were being paid by the trust. I mean, I don't think I could ever spend $10,000 to $15,000 a month on food and clothing. I couldn't be eating lobster every day. It still wouldn't add up to $10,000. So we're the lone wolves here. People, the others reform, they want to maintain people's civil liberties. While we agree with that, there has to come a time for protection of the individual, especially if they're getting stolen from. Imagine if Courtney would have stolen all of Erik's money, and let's say he needed more money for medical, where was the money going to come from?
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, people don't know how serious and how severe and how shitty all this is until they're in it or they're around somebody who's affected by it. It's probably so easy for everybody that's in that courtroom to not really take it as seriously as they should, because they don't understand it. They can't comprehend it yet. But as Erik said, everybody is going to this place whether they like it or not.
We all are. We're all going to have some type of cognitive issues as we get older. So why not put the laws in place to protect us? And that's all we're trying to do, to protect this from happening. So if I need to be incapacitated so someone doesn't steal from me, because, okay, think about it. Change your will. So if I had a will leaving everything to my daughters, and then some guy comes along and has me put him in a will removing my children, that makes no sense, right? That would never happen. Why? Because I'm incapacitated. I'm now changing it to someone else and removing my children. That would never happen. But that's what Courtney did. She made sure she got herself in his will, regardless if they were married or not. She put a gift. She had him put a gift to her for $1 million and $10,000 for her daughter. Regardless, it had nothing to do with whether or not they were married.
How old is your daughter?
Her daughter
Yeah.
or my daughter?
Her daughter.
She's now 15, I think. She's going to be 16. And you know how that saying goes, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I know that when Erik got arrested, Dylan went over her house. Went over Erik's house, and Courtney and her daughter were there. They wouldn't open the door. Courtney wouldn't open the door for Dylan, Erik's son. But Dylan saw Macy, and Macy said, "Hey, is my dad okay? Can you just tell me? Can you give me a thumbs up if my dad is okay or not?" And she just walked on by without giving an answer. So that mother is teaching that child how to not properly treat someone with respect or with human decency.
Do we know how quickly she will go down? Talking about Courtney, do we know how quickly you might notice more like Erik or vice versa? Do we know how quickly Courtney can go down? Because I plan to follow this to the end now. Now that I know what the hell happened was.
Well, her next court date's August 20th. And that's just motions to hear what evidence is going to be admitted and what evidence is not going to be admitted. And then based on that, what the DA has indicated to Erik, based on that next hearing will determine whether or not Courtney will take a plea offer, and then serve her time and whatever the restitution is going to be. If she goes to trial, she's facing up to 14 years.
Wow.
And the trial wouldn't be probably until, I would say, sometime November or December of this year. At the earliest.
Taking a plea deal.
At the earliest. Yeah. So, I mean, she's pretty cavalier. She walks around like she doesn't have a care in the world. Why? Because she was on probation when she was stealing from Erik. She was 4 months into her probation when she was paying her restitution for another court for forging a doctor prescription. So she's just a criminal. And then we found out with Erik's estate planning lawyer that she apparently has stolen from other people as well. So Erik and I think, well, she was stealing from Erik to pay back the other people. And I know the detective reached out to the attorney, but the attorney said none of his clients wanted to cooperate. You see what I'm saying? So people like that, like her, keep getting away with stealing because people don't want to speak up and do the right thing. Do the right thing, and it protects the rest of us.
One of the people that she forged a $200 check to her AA sponsor.
So she's had her own problems, is what you're saying.
She's going to continue to. I'm going to guess
Yeah.
the track she's on, she's going to stay on for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wait.
And it's just, you know, what's that?
I said femme fatale.
Yeah. Yep. I think, you know, she's been on the job of being Courtney Baird long enough now that Courtney Baird is going to stay Courtney Baird for a while.
Hey,
Jail or no jail?
Jail or no jail. But I know you referred to Marshawn, your ex-wife, your now ex-wife, your real ex-wife, being friends, if you will, with Courtney.
Yeah.
Is she criminally dumb? Obviously.
Yeah,
Is she what?
Is she in the middle of all this, or is she gone?
No, she's around. Yep, she's around.
she
So
was
is she in
instrumental.
cahoots with Courtney at all?
I have to be careful of what I say because of Dylan, but yeah, she is around. But if you ask me, she's not someone I really want to be around.
I wouldn't say that she knew what was happening, but she did know that Courtney did write a check and forge a check. But so she knew about that because at the time, Marshawn and I weren't speaking. But when we discovered the theft, we had a meeting at the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, and we invited Marshawn and Dylan because we thought it would be better if all Erik's closest family and friends heard it directly from the detective, not from, you know, me or Erik's sister Kelly. And then we did get Marshawn to play a role in getting Courtney to admit via text messages about the theft, the stealing, the forgery, and that she's going to jail. And, you know, please bail me out of jail. I'll pay you back every cent. I promise. Take care of my daughter. Don't let her go to children's services. You know, so she already knew the routine about what was going to happen if she got arrested. So I wouldn't say they were in cahoots, but I would say Marshawn was aware of one check that she had written and forged.
And at least she helped out with that part. I mean, she should have spoke up long before that. But
Well, yeah.
jeez.
Hey Eric, can I ask you a question related to football? So during your playing time, was there ever a player where you're like, "Oh crap, I got to go against this guy on this Sunday"? And did you ever have an experience against Deion Sanders? Because I see that you guys play in the same time frame. I'm not sure if you guys played against each other.
Yeah, he was in the one time in 1994. That was the year they won the Super Bowl, and that was when he was with San Francisco. And Steve Walsh started that game, but I came in at some point. But I will say that's the best defense, and he's the best cornerback I've ever seen. So they would basically, he would cover whoever he wanted to cover one-on-one, and they'd roll the coverage the other way. So, they were loaded everywhere on defense, everywhere. That was their answer to Dallas Cowboys. So they stacked the deck with everybody they could find. And that's the one where Steve Young threw 6 touchdowns against San Diego in the Super Bowl. But their team, top to bottom, they're like Deion, in my opinion, was probably the best cornerback who I ever saw. Like, not probably, he was. But their whole defense, like if you take their offense, there's not one guy in the league you'd take over their guy. Name a position, doesn't matter. Fullback, tight end, quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line.
Would you even want to look Deion's way, or that was the you wanted to see?
Yeah, every now and then, because one thing he didn't really do at all, really, was cover anybody in the slot. So if he ever did get in there, he wasn't the Deion he was outside. And there was a little later, like, I don't know if you know this, but the draft class he came out of in '89, it was Troy Aikman first, Tony Mandrake second, and then Barry Sanders, and then I think it was either Derek Brooks and Deion or vice versa. So 4 to 5 of those guys in the Hall of Fame. And not just in the Hall of Fame, but like Deion's, in my opinion, probably the best corner ever. Kind of like Bo Jackson's probably the best athlete ever in the history of the world. You could probably say that about Deion in terms of playing cornerback.
Wow. Did you ever get to see Bo Jackson in person? What can you say about just his physique?
No, no. In 1990, I was with the Lions, and we played the Raiders. Only that year I wasn't playing. So, and you remember that run he had against Seattle down the sideline where he takes a sweep and he runs out the tunnel? He goes like 80 yards with it, and he had a run like that in that game. And so you had probably 2 of the best running backs in the history of the game in the same game.
So Eric, what was it like?
Wasn't bad either.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was it like to hand off to Barry? You probably never knew where the hell he was going. You might have had him going wide right, and next thing you know, he's wide left.
Yeah, I saw him, amongst a lot of other Hall of Fame people, make them look silly. So there was a time when we were in Detroit, played in Chicago, and we only had 2 running plays. It was a draw or a slant. And on a draw play, Barry comes through the line, and there's Mike Singletary on the other side in this little hole. And at the end of the play, I mean, they're both in the Hall of Fame, but at the end of the play, one guy had a first down, and one guy was on the ground grabbing nothing. But he did that all the time. He could do that on a 1-yard run. He could go 1 on 11 and make a yard, and it'd be the greatest run ever. Or he could go 80 yards with it, flip the ball to the ref, go to sleep on the sideline, so it's time to go out again. Some of these guys have to get a 3-yard first down, and it's like greatest run in history. I saw, those top 10 shows. I guess it's on NFL Network sometimes. I think it is. Yeah. It'll be like the top 10 runs of all time. And I remember one guy going on there. They'll get these like comedians or whoever to go on and answer the question. And one guy goes on and he goes, "You know what? You could have a top 10 runs of all time, and all of them would be Barry Sanders." I'd have to agree.
He's the best ever in my book, man.
Although I'll tell you this, there was a guy that played with the Lions. His name was Roman Fortin, and he played center, and he played a long time. I think around about 10 years. And back when Griffin was probably, let's see, I would have been with the Bears then, so he was probably around 7 or 8. Okay, and so Roman, who's from Ventura, comes over one day, and him and Griffin are getting into sort of a friendly, what turns into a sort of an argument, but not really. And Griffin's favorite human being was Walter Payton, and they used to hang around at like Walter would kind of hang out and goof off with him outside the locker room after a game, and so I remember. And Roman was talking about how great Barry was. And so it was like this. And then finally Roman goes, Griffin, I'm just going to say it like this. If Walter Payton and Barry Sanders were on the same team, Walter Payton never would have saw the field. Griffin was like, what? But it's probably true.
That's awesome.
That's a cool story.
Man. Well, God, this has been great. Sorry, Don, I want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say this may have been one of the most serious happy hours I've ever been on. But after everything Erik has been through, his face lights up when he talks about the football memories, restores some, I guess, joy to your story. So I'm happy that you have great memories of your playing time, everything that you've been through. Like I said, Tyler, thank you for sharing the story. And Erik, thank you for telling it. And Anna, thank you for helping Erik with everything that you've done. So thank you all.
But thank you.
Thank you, man, Don. And thanks for everybody who took the time to read. And, like Erik said, hopefully this kind of gets things rolling, in a positive direction, the more and more the truth comes out. So that was awesome. Erik and Anna, thanks so much for spending 2 hours, happy hours. We got plural in today. So that was amazing. I can't thank you guys enough for being so honest and open with something so traumatic that I can't imagine living it. So thanks for telling your story.
No worries.
Thank
I got
you,
one
Erik.
question. I got a question.
Let's hear it.
Okay, how many of you guys checked out my daughter?
All right, Anna. So I did. Can I get a follow back from her?
Can you what? Can you get a
Can you
call
tell her
back?
to follow me back?
There you go.
Okay.
Anna,
The
Anna,
matchmaking on the.
Anna, are you opening up your own Madam agency?
I did. They were saying, "Are you her manager?" I go, "No, I'm her pimp mama."
Man. Did she get her good looks from you?
Apparently so.
But right now
Apparently
I'm sick. I'm so sick. I was sick. Like I said, I just got sick coming back from Connecticut or New York, and you guys would see me with tissue in my nose right now because my nose keeps running and stuff like that. I'm like, oh.
It is kind of a
It wouldn't
shame,
be a
Anna.
pretty slight.
I wish you'd had your video on so we could see it. It's too
No
bad.
way. I'll give you some entertainment.
next time, Anna, have Alana take a picture of herself so she can put it
Oh
up there.
yeah, and I can put it. I put
You missed
picture
a
of me,
golden
right?
opportunity to pimp your daughter out here tonight.
This went south so fast, but it was awesome.
Don missed the intro. That's right.
That's right.
But see, look, everyone's laughing now, right?
Love it. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next week. And Erik and Anna, I'm sure we'll be talking.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. See you guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.